So today I have an extremely engrossing speech for you all. But I must warn you, it's severely under time, so if you would all care to laugh as loud and as long as you want to each of the jokes I make, that would mean a lot to me. So in the official Speakers for Jesus textbook, the topic for a student's second speech is entitled, Relate to Your Audience. Well, what's something we can all here relate to? It's my understanding that we're all home educated. Can I get a show of hands? Who here is homeschooled? That's pretty much what I thought. Okay. Well, back when my parents were younger, about 75 years ago, there was a type of popular joke. It was called redneck jokes. These jokes go something like this. You might just be a redneck if your dad walks you to school because you're in the same grade as your dad. Or, you might be a redneck if your ultimate goal in life is to work at a fireworks thing. Today, I'm going to tell you a version of those jokes called You Might Just Be a Homeschooler. You guys might just be a homeschooler if you've ever graded your own test. And you might just be a homeschooler if you've ever hated from public schools. I'm not sure if this is something you guys have done, but in the past, at our old house, I'd play basketball out in our driveway. And then every day, when the public schoolers got back from the bus, they'd walk into the neighborhood. I had this huge gripping fear of them. So I'd run into the garage, and I'd hide behind the bookshelf, watching them slowly walk by. You might just be a homeschooler if you've ever had to explain to someone how you're in multiple grades at the same time. Personally, I'd say like I'm in 12th grade reading and writing, 1st grade in math. I'd say I've got a master's in physical education. You guys might just be a homeschooler if you've been just about through every math curriculum in America. We've personally been through so many curriculums that my mom just started looking at a curriculum from Australia. And you might just be a homeschooler if your mothers never stop talking with each other. Just the other day at the Bridge Charter Schools, my mom and a few other moms talked forever. I just sat in a corner playing Risk, multiple games of Risk. And although being educated has brought me a lot of stereotypes and weird attributes, I think I'm very happy to be homeschooled over these years. I'm very thankful. I think you would all give the same answer. So thank you for listening.
Our next speaker number 4 for the evening, is Joshua Sterner. Joshua is 15 years old. He enjoys playing basketball and working out in his free time. Joshua loves public speaking, a very bold statement for an event like this, which has become one of his favorite subjects this year. Joshua's speech is called The Three Trees. Please welcome Joshua.
Good evening, everyone. I've prepared an adapted story for us tonight. It's a compelling story that you may have heard before, but the author to this day remains unknown. The story takes place thousands of years ago atop a hill where 3 trees grew next to each other. And one day, the second tree turned to the first, asking, "What do you want to grow up to be someday?" And the first tree responded by saying, "I want to grow up to be made into a magnificent chest. I want to hold priceless gems and jewels." "And what about you?" the first tree returned the question. "I want to be made into a mighty, quintessential ship someday. I want to carry powerful kings and queens across the 7 seas." Then the first and the second trees turned to the third, asking the same question. But the third tree's response was quite different from the others, however. "When I grow up, I don't want to leave the hill at all. I want to grow so tall that when people raise their eyes to look at me, they'll raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. Time passed. One day, 3 lumberjacks climbed the very hill where the 3 trees grew. The second turned to the first, asking, "What are you going to do with the tree you chopped down?" And the first answered by saying, "I need beautiful wood that will fit together nicely so it will hold what I want to put into it." "And what about you?" the first lumberjack returned the question. "I need strong wood so I can build a boat to sail on the water." And then the first and the second turned to the third lumberjack. But the third lumberjack's response suggested that he didn't care one way or the other. He simply said, "I just need wood." And with a swoop of the 3 woodcutters' axes, the 3 trees fell. The first tree was happy when she was brought to a carpenter's shop. But to her dismay, she wasn't fashioned into a magnificent chest like she hoped. The carpenter made her into a feed box for animals to eat out of. Instead of holding gold and treasure like she hoped, she held hay and half-chewed vegetables. The second tree smiled when she was taken to a shipyard, but to her disappointment, no mighty ship was built that day. Instead, she was made into a tiny little fishing boat and brought to a lake where she would carry fish to the market. The third tree was simply cut into long, strong beams and left in a pile on the ground. All she ever wanted to do was to point to God. Why was God doing this to the 3 trees? Well, like before, many days and nights passed, and eventually the 3 trees just forgot their dreams. Until one night, the first tree, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a woman laid her son in the cradle that the first tree had been made into. And it dawned on the first tree that she held the most precious treasure in the world. The second tree was pulled out into the lake one night as a man and his friends crowded the little boat. The man quickly fell asleep, and not long after, an enormous storm began. The second tree could barely carry the men through the horrible storm. But suddenly, the man arose from his slumber and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Everything was calm, and the storm stopped. The second tree realized that she was carrying the king of creation. And one Friday morning, the third tree was yanked from the pile she lay in and was nailed into a T shape. And a man was crucified on her, and she held him there until he died. But 3 days later, the man who had been crucified on her rose again. And whenever someone looks at the third tree, whenever someone looks at the shape of the cross, they think of God and his sacrifice for us. Oftentimes in life, we can find ourselves discontent with what happens. We can find ourselves unsatisfied or angry with God. The story of Joseph in Genesis is a great example of this. Joseph had it all until one day he was framed and thrown into prison for years. But it all turned around for Joseph one day when he interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams and became second in command of the kingdom of Egypt, giving all credit to God for the interpretation. After all that Joseph endured, it turned out God had a plan for him all along that was bigger than he ever knew. The 3 trees in the story had a similar experience. God didn't give them what they wanted: to be a glorious chest, a magnificent ship, or to stay on the hill. But God revealed that he had a plan for them that was bigger than they ever knew. The first tree was upset when she was made into a simple feeding trough, but in the end, Jesus was laid in the very cradle that she'd been made into. The second tree wasn't happy when she was made into a little fishing boat, but soon she carried the King of all kings. The third tree ever only wanted to point to God, but when Jesus was crucified on her, now everyone looks at the cross and thinks of God. Personally, I have found myself developing a small stigma about the matter, although it's nothing nearly as significant as Joseph or the 3 trees. Since I joined Speakers for Jesus, I've had a huge desire to win that stretch award. those of you who don't know what that is, that's just an award given to students who perform above and beyond. So I worked hard in every speech and role I had. I took on extra roles due to my brothers becoming busy with other schools. But I still haven't won that award. I don't know why God hasn't let me succeed in this area yet. But I can rest assured that He has a plan for me that is bigger than I will ever know. As He says in Jeremiah 21:11. So to conclude, you may never get exactly what you dreamed for in life. But that's because God loves you. God's chosen you, and He has a plan for you. It may not seem like it at first, as things may not go your way. But in the end, His plan for you encompasses so much more than you can even fathom. And the plan is all to God's glory. Thank you.
Timekeeper, may we have the time, please?
7 minutes.
Woo!
By the hair of his chinny chin chin. I am floored with Joshua's talent. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to say I was felled.